If you've ever been confused about entity-framework call relationships, one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many, then stick around. In this video, we'll build all of them from scratch in .NET 9 using code-first migrations. By the end, you fully understand how relationships work in EF Core 9 and how to apply them in your project. Let's start with a fresh .NET 9 project, and we're going to add the necessary packages. So I'll create a new project, select ASP.NET Core Web API. I'll call this EF Relationships. Demo. I'll keep the defaults as they are. App has been created. We're going to add NuGet packages to allow us to play around with the database. So I'm going to right click, select manage NuGet packages. I'll go to browse, and I'm going to look for the entity framework core packages. I'll install the entity framework core package. Then I'll install the SQL Server package. Make sure it's version 9. And to enable my migrations, I'm going to install the .tools package. I'll hit accept. Once that's done, we can save and close all these tabs. So a one-to-one relationships, which we're going to start with, means that one entity is linked to exactly one other entity. So let's use a simple example. A student has one student address. So that means that only a student will have a single address. So I'll create a folder, and I'm going to call this models. And within the models, I'm going to create a class. The first one I'll call it student, and the next one I'll call it student address. A student is going to have a student ID, and it will have student name. But we need to find a link between the student and the address. How are they linked? So we'll use what we call a navigation property to bring in this. So we're going to bring in an object of that student address. So it says that a student has this, plus it has the student address. Then I will go to the student address as well. And an address needs to have an ID that uniquely identifies that. So we'll have a student address ID, and we'll have an address line, and we'll need to also link this to the student. So we need to have the foreign key. It will be a student ID. So this student ID will now link to that student. So that's what we call a foreign key. And we also have to bring in the student property. So I'll say prop student. Okay. You can make it nullable. So what we've done here is to craft a one-to-one relationship. So what we're saying is, I'll begin with a student. We'll say a student has an ID and it has a name. But within that, it also has access to the address property. And for the address, for us to know that it belongs to which student, we'll use the student ID as the foreign key. So since we're using it from a core, we use the database context to talk to our database. So I'm going to create another folder. I'll call this data. And within that data, we are going to create a database context that will be used to talk to the database. So I'll say add a class, and the class will be an app DB context. It's just a normal class. But for us to make it a context, then it has to inherit from the DB context. And as per tradition, we bring in the constructor, and the constructor takes in the DB context options, which takes in the name of the context. And we'll give it the options. And that goes to the base as well. So this context is how we talk to our database. Then we have to structure our one-to-one database sets. Database sets are just, in simple terms, your tables. So we want a student to be a table, the address to be a table as well. So we'll bring in database sets to say prop, a DB set of type student. Then the name of the table will be student. We'll do the same for the student address. So prop, DB set of student address. The property will be student addresses. So we're saying the context, as we are running our context, we're going to create these tables. If you leave it like this, Entity Framework is smart enough to try to infer, and it tries to build these one-to-ones on its own. But I want us to do it the manual way so that you understand how best you can do it and how best you can configure it yourself. So we'll proceed to bring a function which we're going to override the on model creating. So what we're saying is, as the database is being created, we want you to run these functionalities. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to say, we're going to write on the model builder. So we're going to say model builder dot entity. So entity is just what we're writing. So we'll say student, a student entity, it has one. Okay, so it has one, like we mentioned, one student address. Then we proceed to say with one student, and it needs to have a foreign key where it links. So we're saying the student will have one address with one student, and these two will be linked by the student ID, and that's what you're going to use to link the two. So once you've done this, we have to tell our database where it will get the database information from. So we'll add the DB context as a dependency in our DB in our DI container. So it gives you a place there to add your services. So we're going to say right on the builder, which we create here, and we're going to say the services. Then we'll say dot add DB context. The name of our context is app DB context. Then if you remember, the app DB context needs an option. So we'll give it that option. We'll say option, give me option dot use SQL Server. We had added this as an Entity Framework, so it'll come in, and we'll give it a connection called default connection. That's where it will go, and it's going to take the database string. So that's one thing we've done. Now we have to define this one and give it what it needs. So this can be defined in the app settings. So by default, if you add a connection string, it will know that this is what we're dealing with, and we'll call that default connection. So you will see that we have server local DB. So this comes with Visual Studio. If you have Visual Studio installed, this comes automatically there. This is the database name. I'll call it DB. Let's just put YT for YouTube. Then that says create for me a table code, a database code that. and trusted connection, use Windows authentication, and allow multiple hits on the database. Once you've done that, you're pretty much done. So we're going to run a migration that will enable us to create this database. So I'll go to Tools, Package Manager Console, bring this one up. Then I'll say Add Migration. I'll say Added one-to-one relationship. Make that descriptive because it will be a name of a class. Once I do that, you'll see a folder called Migration appear on this one here. It's there, and you see that the name of the migration class will be the description that you've done there, and at the beginning there is just a timestamp. So it's always good to know to add this so you know that it's one-to-one. And you see it will create tables for you, student and the student address, and it will also know how they are related via the foreign key. So you see the foreign key there, it has created. If you want to undo, you just press down, it will drop more tables. But now that that's just a migration, we have to effect this migration, and we use the command update database. Update database. There must be a typo there. Update database. This will now go out of its way, and it will go and create the database. SQL Server Studio. I'm going to refresh. Then open the databases. You'll see we have that fresh database. And if you go to the table there will be 3 tables. One just keeps your migration history in case you want to change, and you can follow through. And if I can just open that up for demo, you see that it has that migration we did. And if we keep adding migrations, they will come there. Then we have the student address, and we have the student. So how do we test the one-to-one relationship? What I'll do is I'll go to the students table and I'll click edit. Then the ID is auto increment. I'll post that name. I'll put Jane Doe. Then I'll add John Doe. So Jane Doe is 1, John Doe is 2. If I go to the student address, I can add now the addresses of the students. So I'll say address line 1, I'll say home 1, and it will want an ID which is 1 for Jane Doe. But if I put home 2 and put an ID of 1, it would reject that. It will say that it's a duplicate key. Because it's one-to-one, only one student can have one address. So there you can see it's already denying that. But if I make this 2, it will work. And if I add home 3 and add an ID 3, which doesn't exist, it will also tell you that the insert failed because there's a conflict with the foreign key. So these 2 tables are linked. I cannot add into the student address. So you'll see that it does not pick up. It says no because it doesn't exist. So we have linked this table to have a one-to-one relationship. So I'll try to run a query so that you see how it's going to come up. So I can say select s.studentID. So give me the student ID, and I can say also give me the name, and give me in the other table I want the address line. Give me the address line from students as S, then join student addresses table A on s.studentID, where a.studentID. Okay, I'll try to, this should be student name. All right. So I'm saying select S is for one table, which is the student table. On the S, get me the ID of the student. On the same table, get me the student name. Then get me in another table the address line from the students, which is S. You see the S is that one. Join the students' addresses, which is the A there, on. So this on is where you see that foreign key relationship. Now if I run this, you'll see that I will get, what are we getting? It's saying join students A on s dot id is equal to a dot student id. Okay, why are we getting an error? If we run that, you'll see that it will get for you an ID of the student and the address. So you can create a join statement and see that. So you have done your one-to-one. We shall now proceed to one-to-many.